So how's it going, motherfuckers? I am here finally with your Star Wars The Last Jedi review. So this is my first viewing of the film. I'm planning on seeing it again. As you can see right there, there's the proof, like I need any. So, I had some concerns, and then I stopped myself from having those said concerns when I viewed the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. It's pretty peculiar that usually I am in disagreement with the critics most of the time. Well, really, it's most of the time when we're talking about the Marvel movies, or the superhero movies in general. So the DC ones, I've made many videos on that. But now we have to talk about how the audience is getting it wrong. So before I saw this movie, I checked the audience score, and the audience reception was 55%. There was discussion of many fans being unhappy with the direction of this film, being unhappy with a lot of the events that took place in this film. So, as I was watching this movie, I went in with high hopes because I am one who has enjoyed every Star Wars film that has been released, including the prequels, and I have made numerous videos on that topic. And one video where I talked about the prequels and all, and how I think a lot of the hatred towards those films is misplaced, and that I don't think that those films get the credit that they deserve. And they were also films that got a lot of credit when they were first released, but then in retrospect, people started to turn on them the more critics started to turn on them. So people allow themselves to get brainwashed. This is a little bit odd, though. A lot of fans had problems with this film, and they didn't have problems with The Force Awakens as much. They did have certain problems with that film. We'll discuss that in a moment. Mostly it was just about how this film took place. And some people, I think they touched on the comedy, which I thought was excellently implemented. I thought a lot of the comedic moments in this film worked really well. Um, they did seem different than the type of the humor is lighthearted. It never gets out of hand. Um, it is a type of humor that the series has been known for, but they do throw a couple of things in there that seem a bit more modern, a bit more like awkward humor that that maybe certain people might not get, because I remember there is certain people that don't like that awkward style of humor. They like a more slapstick, and there is a lot of there's different styles of comedy in this one, man. It's not a comedy, and this film knows when to take itself seriously, and that is through most of the film. But there's a lot of comedy, so people touched on that. Um, there's a lot of little jokes with the creatures and everything. And I will say that I am going to put spoilers in this little review here, so you might want to be aware of that. I'll probably put that down in the description just so people don't get out of control and start complaining about the video or anything. But so I just want to get that out of the way about the comedy being a problem in the film. I don't really think that it is comedic. There's a bunch of scenes where Ray is on the island with Luke, and they're training, and there's little jokes with the natives that live there, the caretakers, which they're called. And Ray there's kind of a little running gag where she's destroying things kind of accidentally on the island, and the reactions of the natives. It's funny, and there's nothing really that gets out of place here. And there are things where characters react in the way where there's humorous moments where it kind of like the humor's not forced. I will say that everything kind of has a moment where you can laugh at it. It doesn't feel like they're just shoehorning a joke in there just to have a joke there. It's always a way of telling the story and telling it in a humorous way. So that's all part of telling a good story. If you're a good storyteller, like, and has nothing to do with movies. You're just having a conversation with people. You want to throw in a couple of jokes just to add levity to this situation. And of course, there's people that don't have a sense of humor, and they might not enjoy that style of humor that you're presenting, and they might not laugh. And that's kind of what we have here. So if anybody really has a problem, it's more just your sense of humor, or maybe you just don't have, a sense of humor, and you're not willing to really take that form of entertainment to heart and really enjoy it. You might be taking it to heart in a different way. You feel it's trying to disparage the Star Wars legacy. And, we've had this problem for years and years. Every single film, of course, Return of the Jedi was released before I was born, but the reactions to these films, there's always different. And then like I said, we look back on them in retrospect and we start attacking the films for different reasons. So before I really go in, and I will say that The Last Jedi is an excellent film, and I think that it is actually a superior film to The Force Awakens. I enjoyed it more. So Force Awakens, when it first came out, it was met with a lot of praise. People were happy. They said it was a return to form for Star Wars that they hadn't seen since Return of the Jedi. Um, and I could see the more and more I talk about this, I was just about to make a verbal trip up. I'm gonna probably confuse myself a lot of times when I refer to the Return of the Jedi and the Last Jedi. The titles are so similar, um, but I'll try not to. But anyway, when Force Awakens was released in 2015 at the end of the year, people enjoyed. They said it was a return to form. Then they started saying it was too much like A New Hope. So a return to form isn't exactly what you wanted because it was too familiar. But I kind of saw where people were kind of getting that from. The story kind of starts out where we see Rey on Jakku, which is very, very reminiscent of Tatooine, where Luke Skywalker was living in The New Hope. And then we see that the heroes kind of get together, they kind of form a little team, and then they end up going to the planet, space station, which is very reminiscent of the Death Star. And then we see them climbing on things. It reminds us, when Obi-Wan was taking down the shield generator. It was, there's a lot of things that were callbacks, and they were put there on purpose because it had been a while since we had that style of film since the original trilogy, and since people were clamoring for that, there was a lot of pressure on J.J. Abrams. If these films in any way were reminiscent of the prequels, people would have fucking flamed the guy. They would have went out of control, launched against him, and it would have been like the end of his career pretty much, because he's not as big as George Lucas that could really take as many shots as he did. So in a lot of ways, I felt bad for J.J. Abrams because I knew, like, heading into this he was a creative guy. I enjoyed his remake of Star Trek: The Reboot, not so much the Wrath of Khan wannabe sequel, but he did give us Lost, and that was a great TV series, one of my favorite TV series of all time. And so I had a lot of hope for JJ as a director, and my hopes were met, and fully realized that they, you know, that these high hopes, they were well recognized, and they were confirmed that Force Awakens ended up being a good movie, and of course, to have a good movie, you need a good director, you need a good producer, and that's what happened. JJ ended up coming up with a great film. Um, and what he did was try to introduce new characters, which he succeeded, introduce new planets, and try to form a new story arc. And he did it successfully. But in order to do so, he felt that it was necessary to do certain callbacks, that he had to have certain nostalgic set pieces, and certain like tropes, I guess you could say, that had to be thrown in there so people would really feel a sense of callback to that original trilogy. Because this isn't my opinion, but many people wanted to forget about the prequels. They didn't like the prequels, they didn't like anything about the prequels, or they were brainwashed by their friends and critics into not liking the prequels. And so those things were kind of banished. There was even, I don't know how much this is confirmed, that Disney wanted to just completely wash over the prequels and kind of just throw them away and not make them canon. But we all know that you just simply can't make something canon when you didn't really create that franchise. This franchise, whether you buy it out or not, truly belongs to the heart and brain of George Lucas. That is his child. That is his mind. His came from his proverbial loins. This is George Lucas's creation, whether you like to admit it or not. This is his universe. He created it, and all of this would not exist without the man. So that's why I think it's important that we preserve those prequels. But this is not really about that. It was important to have callbacks in the Force Awakens, and that's what they did. And because they had those callbacks, a few months after the film was released, people were saying it was too much like A New Hope, Episode 4, the first Star Wars movie ever released. And I thought that this was completely ridiculous, that they were making this a huge criticism of the film, saying that it was a carbon copy of that film, when there was just about as much new stuff in that film as there was in the direct sequel, Empire Strikes Back. I mean, there were just things that were similar. It was not in any way a remake. I believe that maybe he might have used it as a template, because A New Hope is just great storytelling and a great introduction to the Star Wars universe. Um, and it really is, like, I would say that if you're going to watch Star Wars and really get a feel of what it is and what it would grow into, I would say start with A New Hope. I'm not saying that that is my favorite entry in the series. It's very hard to pick, but I probably would side with Empire Strikes Back. I'm not 100% on that. But that first film I loved so much. It's like, I don't know. It's very hard to really pick a favorite. But the thing is, that was probably used as a template by J.J. Abrams in order to make a successful film. It's not like he completely copied it. There's so many things that are different. There's just about as many things different as there are similar in Force Awakens and A New Hope. But anyway, so we got that out of the way. So we see that there's a lot of attacks coming from all sides. And The Last Jedi is getting attacked now, too. Now they're saying that it's too new. And that's why I had to do this little prologue here. Because in order to understand what people don't like about The Last Jedi, you have to understand what fans didn't like about Force Awakens. So you see that there is an endless cycle here. It's an endless cycle. And we have seen this time and time again. And people jumped all over George Lucas when he was interviewed about this maybe this interview was like a decade ago. When the guy was getting hammered over the prequels, he simply asked people, "When did you see Star Wars?" And they would reply, "When I was a kid." And he says, "Well, there's your answer why you don't like these films." Because you see, when we grew up and we were introduced to Star Wars, and of course, when I grew up, I was watching Star Wars on TV, but it was always edited and stuff. And so the first time I really got to see Star Wars, as a whole, and really started to appreciate it, was when the first film was released in theaters, the special edition in 1997. It was a big, huge event. People flocked to the theaters because such a crisp quality image, for such a classic movie. It was amazing. And 20 years after the release of the film, people finally got to see Star Wars the way it was probably intended always to be seen by George Lucas. Everybody would want their movie to look the absolute best it possibly can, but back in 77 it was just a bit unrealistic to think that the crystal clear quality image was possible for a film of that was of this caliber. So that's when I was first exposed in 97. It was huge, and it was great. What a great thing it was to have this. People, of course, also attacked the special editions too. Too many changes, and I'm gonna get to that in a second. So you see, so that was really my introduction in the stores. I was 10 years old at the time. We're about to turn 10. I was born in 1987. So in 1997, the films were re-released, and it was, intended for people like me, people that really didn't get that experience that was available to people 20 years prior, where they got to see Star Wars being released in the theaters, and feeling that sense of celebration and excitement that the films carried with them. So they re-released them, and man, oh man, it was quite an exciting time. The action figures were coming out. There was Star Wars merchandise up the ass, and these films were they were back at their peak of popularity. And this was also as a way of ushering in the new films that were about to hit. And 2 years after, we were about to get Phantom Menace. Not even 2 years. It was like less than 2 years off. And so, they wanted to make sure that kids, just as their parents seen these Star Wars films, that they got to see these so they could then launch into the brand new stratosphere of the prequels. And I was really starting to appreciate the creativity, the excitement, the universe of Star Wars. And that's what happened when I got to see the special edition in 97. Now, of course, many people weren't happy about the changes made to the series. Um, at the release of the special edition. Of course, the one that had the most changes was A New Hope, including the title itself. They called it A New Hope. That was not even the title back then. But now, when we refer to Episode 4, it was just known as Star Wars. That was just the title itself. So there was a lot of changes. You had the Jabba the Hutt change. There was many scenes that were redone in CGI, and many people were very unhappy about this, especially the whole Greedo shooting first thing, and it caused an outrage that still, to now 20 years later after the release, is still sending shockwaves throughout Star Wars fandom and the universe. I mean, it was crazy. People loved it like me, and people also hated the same breath. And I could see if these films are changed. I'm also one of those people that feel that they should have kept the Greedo shooting thing the same, and the job of the Hutt thing. I think it's interesting, and I really wish that they would have kept those original films. There was a DVD release with the original on it, but um, kind of got glossed over, where people just kind of want all the releases to be the same. And I'm definitely not a big fan of a lot of the changes made to the Blu-rays, but that's a rant for another day. So you can see that there was a lot of outrage over that. Then the prequels came out, and then it seemed like a lot of adults were really unhappy about what happened with those films. They said that they were not, and I will agree. As I started to get older and look at these films, I said the prequels are quite different. They're they do have the same Star Wars charm, but there is something certainly different about these prequels that that can't be found in the original trilogy. There's different things, and it would take a whole video to really discuss those things, but there is a different way of there was a different approach to these films. George Lucas took a different approach that could definitely be seen in all three of those films. And, one of the things, though, that I don't think he got credit for was Revenge of the Sith. I mean, how he made that film dark. I mean, that is probably the darkest film I have seen, probably up until Last Jedi. I'd say for the darkest Star Wars films, not even Empire Strikes Back even gets close to that. Even that is more lighthearted than what we see. It is still pretty dark, but I think Revenge is a pretty dark film. So there was definitely a different approach to everything, from the romance in Episode 2, to the whole scenes on Tatooine with the pod race. And there's a different feel to the prequels, of course. And I love them. I still eat them up to this day. I mean, I still think that there is a lot to love about all three of those prequel films, but a lot of the adults were just very, very angry at them, saying that George Lucas had destroyed their childhood. And the thing is, George Lucas made a great point, is that all of these people complaining, that if they were kids, they would probably like it, because the thing is, it was something new. So you see that people now from my generation have now grown up from when they got to see those remastered special editions, those beautiful looking films. And then the prequels came out, and we were all liking them. And then when they got older, they started complaining as they got in, as we got into our 20s, people started rebelling against those films. They started to get older and more jaded. And now we see now with the release of um, the new, the new trilogy that's come out, the new sequel trilogy, people are now once again going the same way. They are complaining their asses off. The kids are loving it. And you see that it's just an endless cycle. It really is. You're going to have the new generation that's going to love these films, and the old generation that's going to hate these films. And then there's just going to be people like me who are just open minded to these films and just love Star Wars so much and love seeing new things introduced. And that's kind of how I am when it comes to it. Now, a lot of people would say from this channel that I'm kind of closed minded. I'm not very accepting of certain things, but it depends on what franchises. When it comes to Star Wars, I've always been open minded because that's what Star Wars is. It's about exploring this gigantic universe. And if you're not, I just don't see how you can be a Star Wars fan if you're not interested in exploring that universe. From the video games to Knights of Old Republic to seeing new characters and new perspectives like Shadows of the Empire, and then having book series like Heir to the Empire, and just seeing like what happened after Return of the Jedi. It is a huge, awesome thing, the expanded universe, and the fact that we don't even need an expanded universe really. People were saying they should make movies out of the expanded universe. Now we have a new and you can definitely see in The Last Jedi, you're seeing people riding on ATSTs. These are things that like were only in the games, and now that they have come to the silver screen and we're able to see this. I mean, there was so much that this film showed us. I mean, we got to see quite a bit. The same way how like the Sith Lords, the Knights of the Old Republic explored the dark side in such a twisted and dark way. When Rey goes down that hole and explores her dark side, that sent chills down my spine. I was like, we're truly experiencing something great here. We're seeing something visually stunning. When they show her, and it's like you can't even really comprehend the scene, like what's going on. She's staring at herself in a glass mirror, and you see multiple rays. I mean, it's kind of like you kind of have to really think what are we really being presented with here. Now, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, this is just what doesn't make sense," and just people just just completely dismissing it. I kind of don't understand. There's so many shows out there where things don't even make sense. I mean, this is a generation that enjoys a show called Stranger Things that kind of goes and defies all sense of logic. Um, and you watch all these strange things on TV. And what's another show that um it's like right on the tip of my tongue, but there's another really strange show. I think it's on HBO. Oh, Twin Peaks. Just like these shows that just are like mind fucks, and people enjoy that, but they just don't want to sit around for anything that is deeper in Star Wars. Like it gets too deep for them, and I'm just saying, like it's like why don't you want something deeper in this film? Don't you want to explore the other avenues of this universe? I mean, it's been expanded on in games and comics, and we waited for years and years to get something new. Oh, George, we don't want to see the prequels. We don't want to see what happened in the past. We want to see what happened really far in the past. We don't, we were far into the future, and we're finally getting that, and we're just being unappreciative about it. It's seeing Mark Hamill back on the screen, just seeing how awesome he looks, like aged, and just being this Jedi master who just wants to cut himself off, and in exile. Seeing him train Rey, seeing the dark side in her, and just seeing Rey and and Kylo Ren interacting, and the flashbacks of Kylo Ren destroying the Jedi Temple. I mean, I gotta say, I really liked what they did where Kylo was reaching out to Rey through the Force mentally, telepathically. I thought those scenes were awesome. I mean, they were riveting. It was like spooky and creepy. And there was space battles out the ass, and I still can't believe that they basically seemed like they shot this whole entire film before Carrie Fisher died. I was all like, I don't know how they're going to explain this in the next film, but I thought when they blew up the bridge that she was on, I thought that they were just going to end it right there, and that's how they were going to write her off. Now they're making like at the end of the film that she's still alive, and that was a year ago. So I don't really know how that was a great idea, unless they have a piece of footage where they plan to kill her off in episode 9. I don't know why they took that route. That was a bit peculiar, but like I said, we don't know what's going to happen in the next episode. Um, Great finale in this film. This film, it takes advantage of all 2.5 hours that it has to offer. I mean, there's not really one point in this film where I was bored or put off. Like I said, there's a lot of humorous moments. But seeing, big spoiler here, so I've already warned you. Seeing Kylo Ren killing Snoke, I mean, I just didn't expect that to happen. I kind of sensed it was going to happen when Snoke brings Rey to her knees and tells Kylo to execute her. I kind of figured this was going to be the moment where he's going to turn on her. I knew he wasn't going to the light side. I thought maybe for a moment there, but I knew it was more that he just wanted to be on his own, that he's unchained. And they really seemed to grow this character. And I think that the director of this film kind of learned, because there were even people that liked Force Awakens, they weren't really thrilled with Kylo. They kind of saw him as a child. They kind of just saw him as Han's boy. I kind of thought that that was a great way of getting him over as the main villain by having him kill Han. It was an unpopular decision. But now we have seen that Kylo now, not only did he kill Han, he killed Snoke, his own master, and now he killed Luke Skywalker. Which I have to admit, that I wasn't as thrilled about. I really was hoping that they were going to keep Luke alive, but I'm really hoping that in episode 9 that they keep him around at least as a ghost like Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I wanted to see a lot of him. I want, because the thing is, I really wanted to see more of Luke training Rey. And maybe that's kind of maybe what I could say as a criticism. And there are very few criticisms. Is that probably I would have liked to see Luke training Rey a bit more, doing some more training exercises, kind of like what we got to see with Yoda or Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. That, but I really can't say like where they could have put that in the film without just simply expanding the overall running time, which already you're asking people to sit there for 2.5 hours. We can't really have a 3-hour Star Wars, so I'm sorry, but that really would be going overboard. We got to keep these films condensed as much as possible. We can't make them feel bloated or just like they're just, kind of just taking up way too much of your time. But I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. But that's the thing. I mean, I guess that's what keeps us coming back more and more. So we'll see the material that is there. And the interaction with Mark Hamill and Daisy is just great here. I mean, I'm really on board as Rey is the main hero. There's a lot of people that are not very happy about this, and they they think it's kind of force fed, kind of to have I'm all for like just not crazy about them trying to push certain things in movies like with diversity and stuff, but I really kind of feel like I could simply overlook that if that is kind of what they're trying to do here. I don't think it's force fed at all. We have really a lot of male heroes though, and a lot of strong roles. Look at Mark Hamill here. Um, but I think Rey is a great, strong character. And she is very likable, and I can get behind her as a hero. And just seeing her interact here with the hero of of the previous trilogy. I mean, I think that she does an amazing job. Um, Everybody plays a great role here. I was even really starting to get more endeared to Poe. Um, he is. I guess that's kind of why another reason why it was easier to kill off Han Solo, because we have this great character in Poe, and I mean, yeah, he's not even close to the charisma of a Harrison Ford, but I mean, I really like this guy. Thinking of him as like a secondary awesome character, kind of like a Dash Rendar of sorts. Um, but I like his character as well. Um, but like I said, it would have been interesting to see a bit more of training sequences with Luke and Ray, but we did get to see enough interaction between the two of them as he tries to keep Ray from going to the dark side. He explains the story about Kylo Ren. So in episode 9, I hope, like I said, they keep him around in like an Obi-Wan role, and he could talk to her from beyond the grave, and that'd be awesome. Um, and the way how they end it, like killing Luke, though, you can't really say that he didn't go out in a blaze of glory. I mean, it was 10 times more triumphant even than Han's death. I mean, standing there, getting the shit blasted out of him by those AT-ATs, and he just is like nothing. How about that? Like, this is what I'm talking about. When he brushed the dirt off his shoulder, the humor is so great in this, and that's what I'm saying. It's not like these jokes where you're just gonna laugh at them once. We're gonna be looking back on that moment for years. I mean, they made him look awesome in this film. I mean, he didn't see a lot of combat. There's not a lot of fighting with him besides a brief scuffle with Rey. I mean, this is about it. That's all we get to see, action wise from Luke. But that is such a great way to go out, to look that awesome, just brushing the dirt off his shoulder after getting blasted by all those AT-ATs. I mean, that was a great moment for this series. And the portrayal of that character. I thought that he just did a great job, and I'm saying, like, moments like this. I don't know how people could really dislike this film. What was really that wrong with it? Like, I don't really understand like what people are really having a big problem about. Um, you get a new planet, this a couple of new planets actually, but you get this let's talk about Finn, and he gets a new ally, this Asian girl. Her sister dies. I kind of forget the girl's name, so I am going to have to refer to her as the Asian girl. So they're together. um Poe comes up with a secret mission where they should, they're gonna go look for a master code breaker, and they go to this casino planet. And this is a great looking planet. Like I said, this is what's so exciting about the Star Wars universe, getting to see these new places, and they just craft them out of imagination. And they are carrying on Lucas's legacy very well here, because there was enough new creatures and places and set pieces where it felt very Lucas esque. And I'm just saying, it's just it was a great looking planet. And this was a nice little side story for Finn as well. You're exploring all these different places. I like how they this more than Force Awakens. They shot between all these different characters. They keep going back to Rey and Skywalker, Leia and Poe, and and going to see what's going on with Snoke and Kylo Ren, and you see Kylo interacting with Rey. There was just so much going on in this film, but it's all layered very, very well. I just have to say, it's not like dizzying, like too much stuff going on. Like they pace this film where it's not just like you're all over the place. We spend quite a bit of time with these characters, then we move on to these characters, and then here. And then at the end, they all come together. And that was just the thing of beauty. The way how this film works itself out, and all the heroes and villains end up coming together in the end, for a big final battle, that was a thing of beauty. And this movie was a thing of beauty. Like I said, guys, not really a lot of complaints about these films, but like I said, I don't really understand the direct complaints, but I believe I understand mentally what a lot of fans are thinking. This is different than what we're used to. And as you know, we're going to keep on cycling back and cycling back and cycling back. Oh, why can't it be this way? And why can't it be the way how I remember it with this film? And that's how it was. And I kind of see where we're going. The original trilogy was had such a huge magnitude to it when it was first released, and then it was reintroduced to us in 1997. You know, and we're just always going to compare everything to those original films because that was George Lucas's original creation. And you know, if anything is even remotely similar or different, then it is going to get, you know, lambasted. It is, you know, it just doesn't stand a chance. And that's the thing, you're never going to be satisfied with anything. You really are. And the Star Wars fans are just so hard to please. It's ridiculous. The Star Wars universe, if it's not exactly how you want it to be, you're not going to be happy with it. And what we're faced with here, this is the problem. What do you really want them to do? I'm not really understanding. Like, do you want this series not to grow in any way? Do you want them to like have the same characters from the original trilogy, like they're older and just, I don't know, like really, like what? I'm like asking this, so people got to reply in the comments. But what do you really want out of the Star Wars series? What do you want to see transpire? I mean, really, I have to ask the question. What do you people want to see out of Star Wars? What is the goal that you really want them to do? If Last Jedi was such a giant piece of shit and you hated it so much and it was unbearable to watch, what really do you want out of it? What would you like to see them do in episode 9, like to save this series? Because I mean, the way people are making it, like this Last Jedi is so horrible, like completely tanked the franchise. I mean, you know, I didn't even see this much negative reception. It's not like people said Awakens sucked. They just said that it was a little bit too similar to A New Hope for their taste, and it felt more like a reboot or a remake. Um, I really don't know what people want out of this series. This is like what I'm really confused about. What I'm always trying to figure out is like, what do these fans want? So just tell me, like, what would you do in episode 9? What would you do differently? What would you have done differently in this film, for example? What would you do to um to have improved this film? Like if J.J. Abrams or the director of this film came to you and gave you a script and said, change everything. I'm not confident in this script. I don't want to release a movie like this. Change it to your whim. What would you do differently? But like really, like how would you make a successful film that not just you would want to see, but that other people want to see as well? See, that's the thing what you got to keep in mind. You're making a film that you want to rake in not only millions but billions of dollars worldwide. I guarantee you that the film you'd come up with would not do that. I'm just saying. Because this is not fan fiction. It's not that at all. We all know that that would not sell. You take a look at the fan films that came out. These movies, they seem corny, cheesy. Yeah, they don't have the big budget. But you look at the stories and stuff, and you just know that they just wouldn't sell. They just wouldn't make it to a mainstream audience where people would really want to go out and see them that much. So yeah, what would you guys? But seriously, what would you do differently about the Star Wars universe? So since you think it's such a flaming dumpster fire at the moment, I wouldn't change a thing. I think they're doing a great job, and I've been very critical of Disney. But I said, I think they're handling the Star Wars universe very, very well. Like I even said with Rogue One, I says I'm all for even side movies like that. I am very excited to see the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie that they're going to come out with, which I guess is going to be released at the end of 2019, 2018. I mean, I really don't know. Or the Han Solo movie. I don't know what's going to be released. I kind of lost track of it, but honestly, I think they're doing a bang up job, and they should continue going the way they're going, despite what the fanboys have to say. So there you go, guys. That is my review of The Last Jedi, and what's going around. And I think that they did such a marvelous job with this film. Rotten Tomatoes with a 93% critics consensus. I think that they're spot on. I think that once in a while the critics do know when they see a good film. And to me, this was like, if you're not a crazed Star Wars fanboy, it's super critical of everything. I'm a big Star Wars fan, but the thing is, it's like I actually love the series so much that I go into these films looking for stuff to love, not looking for stuff to hate. I guess that's where I differ from the masses. Anyway, guys, until next time.